It begins with a weight of golden metal hanging in the air. A forklift growls across a stained concrete floor, lifting a 5,000-pound coil of cartridge brass onto the waiting uncoiler. The coil is a tight spiral of yellow metal, edges sharp, skin slick with protective oil. Dust floats in hard beams of factory light as the coil locks into place, becoming the raw halo from which thousands of cartridges will be born. Slowly, the coil begins to turn. Under high tension, the brass unwinds and feeds into straightening rollers, groaning as steel and grease force it flat. The sheet slides forward, humming, and disappears under the throat of a massive press. With deafening, rhythmic blows, the press slams down again and again, punching circular cups out of the strip. Warm brass cups tumble onto an oil-stained conveyor while the skeletal leftovers are chopped into jagged scrap destined for recycling and fire. The cups are too hard to be worked further, so they enter a long rotating furnace that glows with internal heat. Inside, gas flames and time soften the metal's grain. Red-hot cups spill from the drum into a quench tank with a violent hiss of steam. When the cloud clears, they are softer, darker, ready to be cleaned in acid baths that strip away scale and discoloration until the brass shines again. Now the shaping begins in earnest. In the draw alley, hydraulic presses grab each cup and drive it through precisely ground carbide dies. With every stroke, the cup grows taller and narrower, transforming into a tube. Coolant floods over the tools, floors glisten with milky liquid, and a whole row of presses hammers in a relentless mechanical rhythm, pulling the metal longer, thinner, truer to its final dimensions. Down the line, a heading press thickens and hardens the base, forming the strong case head and rim. Another tool stamps tiny letters and numbers into that base. Caliber, manufacturer, lot code. An identity pressed into metal in a fraction of a second. Blue flames then lick only the neck and shoulder of each case, annealing the upper body while leaving the head hard. Tapering dies squeeze the straight tube into the familiar bottleneck of a rifle cartridge, and high-speed cutters trim the case mouth to exact length, spraying glittering brass rings into collectors. A fine punch pierces the flash hole through the reinforced base, giving future flame a path to the powder. Lasers and spinning fixtures check thickness and alignment. Anything out of tolerance is shoved aside by bursts of air. The survivors, dirty with oil and wax, are dumped into hot, soapy water with stainless pins, tumbled until they emerge spotless, inside and out. Warm from a final blast of hot air, a single finished case gleams on the line, polished and perfect. A hollow shell waiting to be filled. Elsewhere in the plant, lead and copper are going through their own transformations. Thick, dull gray lead wire is cut into slugs. Thin copper strip is punched into tiny cups, just like the brass once was, but more delicate. Mechanical fingers drop lead into copper, and under enormous pressure, swagging dies squeeze the open mouths closed. The copper flows like clay around the core, forming pointed bullets with smooth, ogive curves. Knurling wheels cut shallow grooves, the cannelure, into the jacketed sides, and carbide sizing dies bring each bullet to a diameter measured in 10,000ths of an inch. In vibrating barrels filled with corncob media, they shed lubricant and grime, emerging bright and sharp, marching along a conveyor in neat, glinting ranks. In a quieter, more tightly controlled wing, primer cups are made and charged. Tiny nickel-plated cups are punched from brass strip and collected like metallic rain. In a high-humidity, explosion-protected room, robotic arms spread wet gray explosive paste, form tiny pellets, and press them into those cups. A paper foil and a minute metal anvil are set in place, and the assembly travels slowly through warm curing tunnels. When the mix dries, it is no longer clay, it is ignition. A droplet of colored lacquer seals each primer, a thin ring of waterproof insurance around the future spark. Outside, the propellant plant breathes solvent and steam. Nitrocellulose fibers are mixed with ether and alcohol into a sticky, dangerous dough, then forced through dies into thin strands. Rotating knives chop the strands into short grains, which lie spread on long trays as solvents evaporate into recovery systems. Once dry, the grains tumble in drums with graphite until they turn black and slippery, flowing like dark sand. This powder will, with a tiny flame in a few milliseconds, turn chemical bonds into pressure and pressure into speed. All paths now converge in the assembly hall, a dense forest of loading machines, gears, and linkages. Polished brass cases pour into collators and feed tubes. Primers slide down narrow channels into place beneath seating punches. Powder hoppers hang full of graphite-coated grains above metering systems that measure out precise charges. Copper-jacketed bullets travel down spring-coiled tubes, rattling toward the final union. Each case is checked to be empty, then receives a primer pressed just below flush with a soft, decisive thump. The case mouth is gently flared to accept a bullet, and a measured volume of powder falls into the waiting brass. A slender rod dips inside to verify the powder level. If it's wrong, the machine locks itself out rather than build a bad round. A bullet drops into the belled mouth and is pushed home by the seating die until the overall length is exactly what the design demands. A final crimp squeezes the case mouth into the bullet's cannelure, locking metal to metal. When the shell plate indexes, a completed cartridge emerges. Case, primer, powder, bullet. 4 separate journeys, now a single, coherent device. Finished rounds spill from the machines in a golden stream, pouring into bins and drums. Conveyors lift them to inspection systems where cameras, lasers, and scales inspect and weigh them at high speed. Defective rounds, crooked primers, odd weights, bulged cases are flicked away by jets of air into red reject boxes. The good ones tumble in walnut shell media for a final polish, then clatter onto vibrating tables that shake away the brown dust. They emerge clean, uniform, and brutally consistent. From there, the world turns cardboard and plastic. Machines fold small retail boxes and drop black plastic trays onto belts. Robotic grippers pick up 50 rounds at a time and snap them into the trays with inhuman precision, lining them into perfectly spaced grids. Trays slide into boxes. Hot glue streaks flaps and sets in seconds. Inkjet heads spray lot codes and dates onto the sides as they race past. Finished boxes accumulate into master cartons, sealed with tape and labeled with hazard symbols and tracking codes, then stacked by towering robot arms onto wooden pallets wrapped tight in clear film. A forklift lifts the finished pallet, forks scraping the floor, and carries it into the towering aisles of the warehouse. Somewhere, a small sample breaks off and travels to the ballistics lab where a single round is clamped into a universal test barrel. A trigger is pulled at the far end of a sound-deadened tunnel, and the cartridge finally does the one thing it was built for. The primer crushes, sparks, powder deflagrates, turning solid grains into high-pressure gas. The case walls swell, sealing against the chamber as gas shoves the bullet down the rifled barrel. Chronographs flash as the bullet passes, and a paper target 100 yards away is punched cleanly. On a computer screen, pressure, and velocity graphs confirm that the thousands of invisible details added up to a single, precise outcome. Far from the plant, a consumer opens a pristine box on a wooden bench. The cardboard tears with a crisp sound that has never known the heat, noise, and acid that formed its contents. Rows of cartridges glint in natural light. Fingers load them into a magazine, compressing a steel spring that remembers every round. The magazine locks into a firearm. The bolt slams forward, stripping a cartridge and shoving it into the chamber with a hard, metallic clunk. A firing pin falls. Inside the brass, chemistry and mechanics replay in miniature what has been tested and perfected at industrial scale. The shot cracks. The bullet vanishes. An empty case, darkened with carbon, is ripped free and flung out of the ejection port, spinning through the air before landing in the dirt with a small, bright ring of sound. Steam and heat shimmer above it. It lies among others, slowly cooling. Golden shine already giving way to tarnish and green corrosion as rain and sun do their work. Later, a hand reaches down and drops that spent case into a bucket of mixed brass. It rattles against dozens of others. Some will be reloaded on a hobbyist's small, hand-driven press in a quiet garage, a miniature echo of the massive factory we left behind. Others will be melted and recast, compressed into new coils and sheets that will one day be lifted again by a forklift onto an uncoiler spindle. Back at the plant, night settles. The main aisles gleam under reduced lighting. Machines hum at a lower tempo but never fully stop. A floor scrubber leaves clean, wet stripes through years of oil and dust. A digital sign above the shop floor ticks from one day without an accident to the next. In a quiet corner, a single perfect cartridge stands on a black reflective surface for a hero photograph. The same cartridge that, zoomed out, becomes just one of millions on racks that stretch into the dim warehouse distance. And as a truck door rolls down on another loaded shipment, sealing pallets of quietly humming potential into darkness, the factory exhales through rooftop vents into the night air. Inside, brass, lead, copper, steel, chemistry, human labor, and electric power all keep circling in the same relentless loop. Raw metal to finished round, shot fire to brass recovered, scrap to coil, coil to case. The cycle continues, one small cartridge at a time.
Did maintenance ever look at the hydraulics on the main line?
No, still leaking. Just top it off every hour.
All right, thanks. See you tomorrow.
The jungle simulation. Rounds are kept at 120 degrees per hour and 95% humidity to check if moisture penetrates the primer sealant.
The lungs of the factory. Massive industrial air compressors power all the pneumatic arms and jets we've seen.
No way that actually happened.
You should have seen his face.
Here's the video.
Check the pressure on press 5. It's running high.
Yeah, I see it. The cooling lines might be blocked again.